Yay, it's LLC day. Yippee, skippy. If I can do fireworks, I would. So there's your fireworks via not sign language. It's not official ASL. But welcome everyone. That's a public school education for you.
Big League is in a festive mood.
It's the
Wow.
deliria before travel.
Yes.
So, anyhow, welcome back everyone for a fun episode of Athletics LLC. We are bringing back a staff meeting. Our bosses told us we need to, so we're all bellied up to the table with our big chairs, but his chair is way bigger, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over immediately so I cannot get yelled at. Sir Lucious, we're here for the staff meeting, sir.
I appreciate you, that wonderful introduction. And we're going to get started with the mythical, magical words of the governor, because he is, you can tell, in an airport. So when he unmutes himself, you can excuse the background banter. But so here's the question. We recently saw Carl Lewis explain why he felt the long jump has taken a step back in terms of performance. Do you agree with Carl, and how do we fix this problem?
Okay, so there was a lot to unpack with what Carl said. And interestingly enough, the clips that came out of his interview were quite inflammatory, if you want to call it what it was, because he basically said that today's generations thinks the long jump is too hard. Basically said that, they get to a certain point and they're like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And there is no doubt that the long jump will drive you to a higher power. It will. And the thing that is so oxymoronic about the long jump is that the better, the more talented, the faster, the stronger, the more explosive you are, the harder it becomes. And the reason is, now something that took, in terms of preparation for the jump or preparation on the penultimate, it gets faster the better you get, okay? So here's what I did. And I went back and did some research on some of the best jumpers in the world. And I found out what their 100-meter times were, okay? Mike Powell, 10:45. I'm sure he was faster than that. Myself, 9:96. Carl Lewis, 9:86. Mike Conley, 10:36, 2021. Roland McGee, 10:41. Larry Myricks, 10:26. Greg Rutherford, 10:26. Dwight Phillips, 10:06. Okay?
Wow.
All of these jumpers have jumped close to 850 or better. Okay? Now, what is the difference? And what are we seeing in today's world? Well, very few jumpers nowadays have those 100-meter times to their resumes. Very, very few. And the reason is that the 100 meters has gone to another level, right? And I know for myself, in the collegiate landscape, in the collegiate world, we all ran as part of our scholarship obligations to a university. Whether we were just running on a 4x1 or we were running at the conference championships, pretty much all long jumpers had a role to play in the sprints at the collegiate level. And that then translated to longer jumps. You have to be a sprinter in order to jump far. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You have to find that magic somewhere in your run where you're approaching 10 meters, approaching 11 meters per second, somewhere in there, in order for that to translate into 850 or better. Okay? So the issue that we're dealing with right now is, A, I don't think today's long jumpers are sprinting enough. And B, the level of coaching when an athlete gets to that point, when they're at that 10-2, 10-3 phase, and they're approaching the board at speeds that are pretty much close to being out of control, you have to have a certain level of coaching to get that athlete to translate it into the pit. As Carl said, the fouls are going to be there regardless. The faster you get, the harder it is to control your speed, and the harder it is to pinpoint, to be accurate on the board. But that doesn't mean you just throw your hands up and give up. It means that you have to do the reps. So are today's athletes jumping enough? I don't think that's the case. I don't think today's athletes are jumping enough to where they can put together an entire year where they're starting out at 20 steps, moving to 22 steps. There is something infinitely world-class when you see a jumper come down the runways, 22 steps with a run-in. That is equivalent to, getting ready to run a 60-meter race, right? And oh, by the way, at the end of the run, you're going to take off and jump. We're not seeing enough consistency amongst today's athletes. I don't think it's a situation where athletes are just throwing up their hands or giving up. I think it may come from the other side, from the coaching side, where an athlete gets to a certain level, hits a wall, and you just have to keep trying. You just have to keep trying. So I would not say to today's athletes, just, give up, it'll never happen. Because we know for sure athletes are bigger, stronger, faster. But that level of dedication, I feel, to the event is not there.
Yeah, you touched on, the speed angle of it, and, probably the guys that come to mind in the recent years, Marquise Dindy, who I think no dough for silver was here at the year at Florida Relays, where he literally stood up, took 2 walking steps out of the blocks, and ran 10:25, right?
Yep.
And then the other guy's Jerry and Lawson, who was
exactly
put off the triple at the NCAA championships. And I think that listening to Carl, I think his biggest thing is there's a lot of fear involved with it now, because they're afraid to take off at that speed. And then I think what you touched on as far as the coaching element of it is huge. There's a lot of, there's not a lot of pride in the coaching of the long jumpers as it used to be. That's just my opinion. And we were treated to the great women's long jump at the NCAA indoors this year. And I would venture to say that the young ladies that went 1-2 weren't necessarily the best or the fastest girls in the field as far as athleticism, but they were definitely the 2 most fearless women in the field.
Absolutely.
Right. And then if you talk about the current NCAA champion, Mr. Pinnock was 1301 hurdler in high school. So we know he's really fast.
He's really fast, really talented.
Right. Yeah. So anybody else want to chime in a little bit about the long jump before we move on?
Go ahead.
I think continuing on that same vein, because we all had to sprint, we had sprint duties, there's a facing of fears that gets involved in that too, right? Like when you have to race the best sprinters as well as go in and do your job, it removes a lot of the fear of long jumping. I don't know if that makes any sense, because the more times you compete, the more competitive you are. And I think the other thing, and this is one of those weird, prosperity breeds problems, all of us kind of got faster and stronger together, right? And so our long jump PBs and our 100 PBs kind of grew together. A great number of these kids start doing speed work at 8 and 9 and 10 years old now, right? Because they start with all of these, they all have personal coaches. So what happens to a lot of them, I think, is a lot of them get fast way before they're strong. So they can't handle takeoffs. So they meet with frustration. And then to Carl's point, then it is too hard, right? It's like trying to teach somebody how to drive with a Corvette. You know what I mean? Like if things are going really fast to start with, there's problems that come with that, and you do have to have a certain amount of resiliency to understand it's like, yeah, it's maximal controllable speed. So just because you can run really fast doesn't mean you can jump really far. You have to learn to put them all together.
I think,
I mean,
sorry, Clyde,
when-
KOP.
yeah, I think all of that is very well said. I agree wholeheartedly with all of that, and I think the governor's points are the points. Carl complains too much. is where I'm at with this particular.
So, but why do you view this as Carl complaining?
Because
the man was asked a
plays.
question, and
No, I understand.
It's like asking Jordan why the current NBA is soft. I mean, he has that mantle.
Actually, you know what? That's an awesome comparison, because Michael Jordan would point out, in his opinion, that the current NBA is soft, but he would not point out that the current NBA is also more skilled than when he played. So that's my issue, right? Carl's a legend. He's arguably the long jump GOAT. Most people would consider him that. I would probably consider him that. But he's always in a position where he's declaring the death of the long jump, right? And that's the part of it where it's just like, I'm just not on that page. There are
not to be contrary, but I really don't. Is that what he did in that interview?
He has done consistently.
No. We're talking about. See, let's stay in the room, please. Let's talk about that interview.
I'm trying
in
to
the context there. Let's get there, because you're like off in left field someplace. Like, okay, the man made a point of the long jump is a skilled event, and that the current athletes are afraid to acquire that skill. I don't think that's declaring the death of anything. I don't think that's saying that anything but the truth. I mean, those of us who coach, in this era right now, we experience every day. So, like, I'm not trying to tell you that Carl has never been afraid to give you his opinion, but he didn't declare the death of the long jump in that interview, Coach. He didn't do that.
But he has. And so this all comes from the point of view of where he seems to start all of his long jump commentary from. And I don't think that those particular points that he were making, though they may be accurate, I just don't believe them to be productive, is what I'm saying. I think that the way KST put it is a much more productive way to look at it. I think it's a more accurate way to look at it, and I think there's a very solvable issue. But the real issue of why you see so much less of increased quality performances is because the event in itself has been devalued at every level since Carl and them were doing it. The money has been taken out. The sponsorship dollars have been taken out. Why would anybody come into professional track these days wanting a long jump? What's the reward for it? It's almost nothing.
As someone that's been around this a long time, I will tell you, there's never been big money in the long jump, ever.
But okay,
there was big.
Because you've been around, you also know that it's way worse now than it was even 5 years ago. It's just factual.
Because there's no difference now between what was 5 years ago anyway. But there's never been the long jumper that was purely a long jumper that was going to make tons of money without spending their summer in Europe jumping every other day.
Right.
And that's never been this big part of money for a long jump ever.
Yeah, so there are far less opportunities now.
Correct.
To go and make a good living in the long jump because there are fewer meets. Like that is clear.
True.
Yeah.
The whole
but I'm the guy that says if you give, like, what's the old thing? If you build it, they will come. So if all of a sudden, if there's a plethora of 28-foot long jumpers, okay, then they will pay them to come jump. Because then they're a show. But see, the thing is, there's nobody to invite to the party because there is no party.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't. Okay, and so since you're on fire, I'm gonna let you go next.
I'm chilling. I got my root.
Okay, so we have seen a bit of a resurgence in the men's hurdles in terms of times, and I think, one of the hurdles, I think it was Trey Cunningham, said that he feels like this is the greatest era of men's high hurdles. I don't necessarily agree with that. right? But he said it. So to what do you attribute the problem with the lack of depth in U.S. hurdling, and even, I guess, hurdling across the world? And what do we have to do to get better at that?
What do I attribute the lack of depth to?
Yeah,
Is the
the high
question.
level. Yeah.
I actually think it's one and the same kind of connection with the long jump problem. Hold on, give me 1 second. I think it's connected to the long jump issue, where there's not nearly as many high quality athletes pursuing the hurdles as you climb the ladder. There seems to be less high quality athletes doing it at the high school level, less high quality athletes doing it at the collegiate level, which breeds, of course, less high quality athletes at the professional level. And it's harder to make a living as a straight up hurdler today. At least that's what the numbers are showing. I'm not talking about, the first world issues. I'm talking about that level just beneath it, where it's really, really difficult. I would disagree that it's the best era of hurdlers ever, for sure. And I think the interesting thing is at the professional level, the numbers feel smaller. But in the past 2 or 3 seasons, maybe, the collegiate level, the numbers seem to be rising. And I think that is a consequence of coaches taking that event more seriously and taking more time to invest in learning how to coach it well. But we're not, it's not like we're seeing 10 guys in the NCAA every year run 13.2. That would define, an explosive era. I think every cycle.
Okay, so I understand. You say you see a rise at the NCAA level, but not the professional level, is what you're saying?
Correct, because I draw a very distinct line between what I consider to be high level professional hurdling. To me, if you can't run sub 13, like, that's the high level. How many people in the world can actually do that right now?
How many people have ever done that?
Exactly. But I think there are less humans who are capable today.
I disagree with that.
And that's fine. You are welcome to disagree, but you asked me the question.
Okay, I'm just saying, like,
and I believe
we will have a lively debate about that soon.
That's cool. And I believe collegiately, what I would call elite collegiately is like 13.4 and down. There's a whole bunch of 13.5, 13.6, 13.7 guys, but I don't see a lot of people that's going to bust through and be 13.3 and below. Does that make sense? That's what I see. I would love to be proven wrong. It's my event. It's what I did. It's one of my favorite events to coach.
So are you saying that you feel, because you're confusing me a little bit, because I hear you saying that collegiate level is elite in your mind for what they're doing?
I think, okay. You asked me about the depth, and I'm trying to clarify, are you asking me about depth of elite hurdlers professional or depth of elite hurdlers collegiate?
So just the event as a whole.
But I don't look at it the event as a whole. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, so let me welcome you to my staff meeting. I need you to answer my question, not what you want your answer to.
But it's 2 different standards.
No, it's not 2 different standards. It's not.
Okay.
It's a question. I need you to stay in the room and help me with my question. See, you want to take it and compartment it. Okay. Here's what I'm gonna say. Okay, so if we're looking at the high hurdles as a unit, right? So we're trying to get everybody to be at the world class. I will say to you immediately that saying that if you can't, like, running sub 13 is like the standard. There's only been like 20 people in the world have ever done that, I think, right?
That's not what I said, but go ahead.
No, that is exactly what you said.
I said the elite, like the top level.
You said if he can't run sub 13, those were your words.
That's right. I said, okay. I don't consider you to be elite if you can't run sub 13. I said that.
So if to be elite, to be one of 20, 25 people that ever done something, it's kind of space age. But at the end of the day, what I'm asking you is, how do we get more people? We'll just take the US. How do we get more people to be in that conversation? And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give you 6 people other than Grant who I know can run sub 13. Okay.
American.
Daniel Roberts, Trey Cunningham.
Sure.
Tench has already done it, right? So he qualified.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Okay. Tench has done it. God, the young man we just watched him indoors.
Devin Allen.
Devin Allen has done it. Cameron Murray can do it, right? So like so there are people out there that can do this. But the question is, and I think your original path was good when you said that it's akin to the long jump. And the reason I put the questions in here is because the long jump and the hurdle takeoffs are married. They're the same. So the same fear that's associated with the long jump takeoff, I think is associated with the hurdle takeoff. And because you now have a barrier involved.
Hurdling's an unnatural act. You wouldn't drive a vehicle at a wall with your foot to the floor. That would be stupid and harmful. And hurdling is basically the same thing. Running hurdles, and that's where I was trying to get to. The elite people, the people that can run really, really, really fast, things that we consider fast, it's a different level of fear when the barriers are coming at you at that type of speed. And it's a fear that has to be overcome. And it's a fear that has to be coached properly and put into context so you can continue to rise at that level. Like, it's easy enough. It's difficult, but it's easy enough to take a 14 flat kid to 13.8 and then to 13.6 and then to 13.4. But that next piece is really, really scary. And the faster you go, the harder it gets, the more complicated it gets, and the more the more pinpointing the little nuances of what's holding you back get more difficult. And I don't believe that there are a lot of people that know how to do that well, coaching wise. And if the question is, how do we foster more of it? You have to direct the talent to the handful of people that know how to do that at the highest level. And there ain't a lot of them, but there's a lot of people.
How about we have those people that know how instruct the people that don't?
Sure.
Because all the hurdlers can't exist in 2 or 3 or 4 places in America. That's not right.
I mean,
right.
Listen, I don't disagree with
right.
that, but hey, they try to squeeze the sprinters into 2, 3, 4 places. So
yeah, and that's not working very well either. So for the record, so all I'm saying to this is that like the long jump, which is why I tried to marry the 2 questions, is I think there's a great fear factor here. So 100%. The whole key is and you guys have heard me say this a million times, right? There's 51 ground contacts. There's 10 hurdles. Everybody wants to worry about the hurdle. Learn to take care of the 51. And with that comes fear, Yes. Like, I have been questioned a million times about Grant. And Grant and I've had this conversation. The man is 6'3", and we all believe that if we train him for the 100, he'd run 9.9, if not faster. And we're carrying that at barriers. So that's the biggest thing we have to overcome, the fear of how really fast he is and taking it through the barriers. Yeah.
Well, and in his case, fast and tall, because it's harder for Grant to cut his stride down. Normal hurdlers, whatever you consider to be your normal stride length in a sprint, regular human hurdlers, men, you're going to get about 80% of that in a run.
75 to 80, yep.
At Grant's height, it's probably closer to 65% of his normal stride.
72.
So it's an insane proposition to begin with. And I'll take it a step further. And I'm not suggesting that one has to have formerly been a hurdler to be a great coach of the hurdles, because that's not true. But unless you run hurdles relatively fast, you can't know what that fear feels like. You can identify it and you can talk about it. But if you haven't actually done it, you don't know what it feels like. And not knowing what it feels like makes it a little bit more difficult, in my opinion, to get people to overcome it.
I will tell you this, that if you take the best hurdlers ever, if you go look at the list, very few of their coaches ever run hurdles.
That's right. And like I said, it's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement. So but they figured, like Love Andreas, no hurdles.
No, Andreas is
Yeah.
definitely not a hurdler.
Right?
Not a hurdler.
You know, so point taken. Big league or no dough for silver. Do you have any comments to this?
I do, and it encompasses both topics. I think part of it, the lack of getting closer to the ceiling as a whole, is what specifically the Americans have done to the athletes, is not let them be athletic anymore. You know, the groups that are coming through the collegiate realms right now have been nurtured to be academics, and be in academia and be more than an athlete, quote unquote. And then for those who weren't forced in that direction, weren't afforded all the same experiences or well-rounded experiences. So there's always like a slice of something missing from another piece of pie. I think that's part of it. I think the national athleticisms are in them, in the said people, regardless of their background. But they're not being nurtured and fostered like they used to be, partly. The other
Absolutely.
thing that I was going to say was part of that athleticism and those things that weren't being fostered or nurtured are skills that aren't, I don't want to use the word innate, but innate anymore. So like Dennis Mitchell posted the video on Instagram. I played with it a little bit with the pole vaulters, but steering, and actually that we have to teach how to steer now. Before, we didn't have to teach how to steer because it was natural intuition to not run into the wall. You figured out how to get there without decreasing forces and still exert force. But they don't know how to do that anymore. So we have to actually teach it. So that's similar to the penultimate step in long jump specifically. There's a certain amount of period of time in education where we're teaching the penultimate step. The penultimate step is always a penultimate step, and the lowering of center of mass is natural because we see it in little kids, but we've untaught it. And so now we've had to reteach it. And so because we've had to reteach it, it's elementary. The skill.
You should have seen Baby Kai doing gallop drills in the hallway an hour ago on his
right?
own.
And it's because he's just moving. His locomotor, he is evolving.
Yeah.
His locomotor skills are evolving, and we've dumbed that down so dramatically. So specifically in America, and we see other cultures via the internet where they nurture those locomotor skills. But I think that pays part of it in its natural form, as opposed to just looking at the resources and the coaching.
Okay. No dough.
Look, all those points I think are all major factors, and I don't want to continue along that path, but I will say this: these numbers are not exact, so I don't need anybody to send Big League a message that my numbers are off. But just trust me, I'm close. It used to be in the summertime in Europe, there were roughly 70 track meets. There were 15 or so Golden League, and then there was roughly 50 to 55 B level and C level meets.
Yeah.
So if you were a sprinter, there was a place for 10-3, 10-2, 10-1, 10 flat, obviously sub 10s, to run in Europe. And therefore, you could go and build your season further, practice your craft at a high level longer in the season, and you had an opportunity to gain ground on greatness more rapidly. What we now have is about 12 Diamond League meets, but the next two levels have been gutted. So the next level that used to have 25 to 30 meets has like 15, and the C level is all gone. So now instead of 70 meets in Europe, there's like 30 meets in Europe. And 12 to 14 of them, you have no shot at getting in unless you're already on the world stage, right? Unless somebody knows your name already. So the issue is you have to be better in college to have an opportunity to run it all after school. So the opportunities are way fewer and farther between for way fewer people, right? I mean, we can get it deep into the weeds and like, look, there's 8 lanes in every track, right? Like, there's a lot of opportunities that are now gone because the entire sea level of meets is gone. All of them are gone. So now you have to develop from being a 10-15 sprinter to a sub 10 sprinter in college, because there is no place.
I'm gonna need to redirect you here because you're talking about the 100 and we're talking about
I just used the 100. My point is, it's no different in the hurdles. So okay, so take out the 100 meters and say the 110 hurdles, right? That is what we were talking about specifically. But it's the same. If you can't get yourself, if you and your coach can't get you to 13.1 or faster in college, there is probably not enough races for you after college to ever get to be a 13 flat, 12.9, 12.8.
And I will challenge you to go to the research, or somebody watching the show to go do the research, because I disagree with you there.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I will do the research and I will bring it next week, because this one I know I'm right.
Okay, well, okay, you may be right about the number of meets being less, but I will tell you that I've watched Freddie Crittenden, who was a 13.3 or 13.4 guy in college, become a 13 flat guy. I watched him do it. So there are opportunities.
You know what? That's
there's a path.
Freddie's an actually really good example, and I'm a huge fan of Freddie and the grind that him and his crew are on down there. But Freddie's story does not happen, and I don't know enough about what kind of structure Freddie has around him that has allowed him to live and function while continuing to pursue this, because it ain't like it happened overnight. It's taken a long time for Freddie to arrive at where he's at. And most of the people in the past 10 years that I know that needed that time to get where Freddie is now,
they stopped
or out of the sport because they didn't have the support structure to get there. So whatever,
I'm going to swing back to something that you started in the beginning. I think more importantly than the structure you talk about or the meet you talk about is the coaching element of it. Because, we see a lot of guys out there that No Doe calls broke professionals, right? Yes. So they're finding a way to exist in the sport. They're just not finding a way to advance in the sport. And it's not because of lack of meets. It might be lack of training. I don't know what they're doing wrong in training or right in training. But there's a lot of guys out there in a lot of events that seem to hang on forever, that just don't get a whole lot better. So I think that for me anyway, the bigger issue may be actually the training camp issue. But that's my thought.
No, I don't disagree.
I just think
there are no professional hurdle training camps other than Phoenix.
Yeah, I think that the lack of opportunities afterwards have it's shrunk the belly of the sport so much.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to the big leaguer. Okay, now we all have some athletes that struggle with things like recovery, nutrition, time management. So what are some aids that you can suggest to help our student athletes get better in these areas?
So of those 3 topics, it all boils down to time management. Point blank, period. When you can not necessarily solve, but identify your time management, it's easier to manage the other 2 facets. And point blank, period, it's easier to manage life. And you can do that for athletes and non-athletes alike. So one thing that we use in our program, and I use in different forums, is just identification. Map out your day, every single hour of your day, what is being done and what isn't being done, and identify where the gaps are. And then that's where you start filling things in. What time can you go into the training room? What time can you go get nutrition? Plan out your snacks, plan out your rehab, plan out treatments, plan out a mental health section. You know, I even go as far as telling the student athletes to plan out your break. Because if you don't plan out the break, then you don't take a break. You know, and I'm definitely preaching to the choir and talking in the mirror right now. But it's one of those things where without identification, it's always I'll get to it. And then there are no more minutes or hours in the day. And I mean,
Okay.
that's it's as simple as it sounds. It's that simple. And you just have to
Oh
make
no,
the choice.
it sounds simple, but it also sounds right to me.
Right.
Know?
And it's an active choice. That's the second part of what I'll say to those three facets that we're trying to improve on is you have to choose to be better at it. You can't say you want to, you can't desire to want to, and you can't talk about or not talk about, think about it. You've got to actually take action and back it up. So the first part is identifying, right? You can't ever solve a problem unless you identify the problem. And then second part is the remedy and finding resolution and then imparting that resolution. And it doesn't have to be 100% all the time. Just the baby steps have to accumulate so that the baby steps turn into habit and habit turns into practice. So
well said. Big leaf with the grand slam.
I apologize because I really don't. I don't like to make it sound that easy, but it is, and we just choose to make it difficult.
I really believe that in the simplistic approach, and the simpler you make things, you know, there's two things I think help with our current student athletes. One, simplicity, and two, find a way to attach it to their phone. Right.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, that's what I tell them, you know, like your Apple Calendar, your Google Calendar, use your alarms, use your notes, use your reminders. And they're like, oh, I said, yeah, you use it for everything else. Like I have I literally have an alarm for picking up breakfast for the team tomorrow, you know, and then I've got to check in and then I got to do this. And it's all an alarm. You know, everybody wonders why my phone makes so much noise, but I don't forget very much. I do forget some, but I don't forget a lot.
Right. Any add-ons for you, either you guys?
10 out of 10, no notes.
All right. So we're gonna let No Doe close us out with the staff meeting. So it's, you know, I'm kind of picking on certain areas here today, but like the high jump, right? Very similar issues. How do we fix the high jump? I mean, with the plethora of athletes that we have in this country, why are we not better in that event? And I know we've had these discussions over the years, and I know this is a very frustrating topic for you. So I ask that your head please not explode tonight, but you know, I had to ask you because I know you wanted to talk about it. So talk away.
I never ever, and you guys have known me for a long time. I'm never the guy that makes excuses. But the first thing I'm gonna say, somebody's gonna say is an excuse, and it's not. It's just a fact. 75% of our talent base is on the bench of a basketball team on spots number 9 through 12.
Sure.
Okay.
Right. And so at the end of the day, like we just have fewer people. We'll start with that. Right. So the next piece is we have been fooled into believing that we were better as a country in coaching the high jump because we had so many physical freaks.
Okay.
Right. So we've had a bunch of people who jumped 230 or above that I'm not trying to be mean, that outleaped their coaching. And a great number of those coaches are still coaching, and they can't understand why they can't create the next one. Well, part of it is, one of the parts is your next one is, you know, we'll never see the floor at whatever school you work at. The other one is that we tend to skip steps when we have elite athletes, because elite athletes can skip steps because their bodies are already able to do certain things. Like they can already skip. They already understand a penultimate. They can already set up certain things because their bodies are smart. If your training models don't start all the way at rudimentary, when you get a kid that's got good athleticism, but really needs to be coached up to get there, you don't have the technical model to do it. So I say all that to say is that we have, you know, to use numerical numbers, we have a coaching model grand scheme in the United States where 230 is high, right? Like we take a lot of kids now and 230 is high. But if you just go back 10 years, and certainly if you go back 10 more, there are people with no technique who could jump 230. Right. And so now we have to make these people. And to be honest, the technical model in a lot of areas is just not there. I mean, the best high jump coach by ways of statistics and people that he's created, I personally think he is the best. But if you just look at numbers, it's not close. Cliff Revelto is going to retire very soon. The issue is when he retires, we didn't create a new one, right? There's not a next generation of Cliff or next generations, if that makes any sense, of Cliff. So what's happening is our pool of high-end coaching ability, kind of the topic you've been on all night, but the pool of high-end coaching ability, people who've coached kids, young men, to 230 and beyond, it just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And that unfortunately is like one of those things that unless we can greatly increase and sort of demand a greater level of coaching education, it's going to continue to go in the direction that it's going. Because you can't just out athlete the high jump. The high jump is one of those things that looks like it's all athleticism, that is 80% science and 20% athletic ability.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Right. And so many people don't get that. Right. Like, listen, Dwight Stones could barely really dunk a basketball. He could dunk, right? But he wasn't no highlight reels or none of that. And that dude jumped 235. He was a former world record holder in the high jump, right? Maybe 236. Mm-hmm. It's science. It's understanding centripetal forces, staying away from bars, and raising your center of, like, falsely raising your center of mass. Like your center of mass is actually down here, but you got this parabola of your body, and understanding the science to that. But so many people don't really dive in. You got to nerd out into the science of the high jump. Otherwise, you get caught in coaching the athleticism of it. And I promise you, it's 80-20 science to athlete at the elite level of high jump. You're talking about getting somebody to jump 7 feet. Listen, you could do that a lot of different ways. But as you say about 10 flat, as we've said about 4 minutes, 7 feet is not high at all. And if we want to be completely frank, 220 isn't high. 225, you start to become a high jump. Okay. So that therein lies. I think
if you marry all of those, the three, things we talked about, and even the topic of big league, if you marry all of them together, a lot of it just comes down to discipline. A lot of it comes down to focus, drive, desire. There's a lot of things that people are missing here. And I think that the thing that I took from what you just said is it's like there's no dive into the science of it anymore. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, all of us have had conversations, and like I know even KOP right now has 2 young hurdlers, but I promise you he's not teaching them the exact same things because they're 2 different skill sets involved. Right. I think that's part of the problem is they don't want to break the mold. They want to just stay in one model and try to teach everybody the same thing. I just don't think that works.
And to your point, whether you're talking about hurdlers, high jumpers, or long jumpers, or any other thing, it's actually a way harder thing to do, because trust me, when athlete A is getting instruction A and beating athlete B, and then athlete B is hearing different things, they're going to start looking at you like, but coach, you said blah, blah, blah to them. I'm like, yeah. Right. Because those problems and these problems are not the same thing. And I need you to focus on this so you can get where you want to go. It's frustrating for the athletes, but coaches have to be able to speak multiple languages, and you have to be able to meet your athletes where they are. And if you're not creative enough, or you don't have enough vocabulary to change up and deliver and coach different people differently, then you end up just running a system. Inject athletes, give them the workouts, and let's see who wins. And to me, that, that's a lower level of doing the job. I think you need to figure out the puzzles for each kid.
Well, we have said this on the show multiple times that I think we all have agreed that the difference between great coaches and good coaches is the great coaches coach the athlete and the good coaches coach the event.
Yeah. Big League,
We have said that before.
One, in reference to what KOP just said, it's hoping, wishing, and praying.
Right.
That's what that is. It's not coaching. It's hoping, wishing, and praying, first off.
Right.
Second, the thing that I was going to say is, and highlight in regards to the coaching aspect, is with the quote unquote younger coaches, and not younger coaches, less refined coaching, maybe is a better word to say that, is they're looking for the tips, the tricks, and I don't want to say gimmicks, but
That's a good one.
I'm going to say what it is. The
I don't
TikTok
want
and
to
the
say it, but I'm
YouTube
going to say
culture.
it.
Yeah, right. It's because, as much as it's the same thing that we accuse our younger adults of, and our younger populations of, is YouTube University, TikTok University, as opposed to actually delving into it. We have a mutual friend, No Dote and I do, who played with ChatGPT and put in, make me a long jump cycle with this and goal and this, and gave details, and ChatGPT gave them a cycle. Now, was it completely accurate? No, but it wasn't super far off either. But it wasn't tailored for the athlete, right? So a less refined coach is going to use that and make that gospel. And if they have the slightest bit of success, right? And we've seen that in the sprints already. Not accurate, but you had success, but you're going to run with it, and it's Bible. So that's fine. But those things, it's learning the principles and the basis of everything, and then cultivating the success for the athlete.
I would just like to point out that Marissa Chu just made our industry worse, because she told,
ChatGPT.
You just told everybody that you can get a almost right training plan via ChatGPT. Now, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Well, you know what? And if it does serve a larger group better, so be it. But we know that's not the truth. That's luck, wishing, and praying.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's thoughts and input on the staff meeting today. I do want to say that, KOP has mentioned that he is here in Gainesville, and Big League is on her way. So the sun shall shine in Gainesville probably after you get here, because it's going to rain all day. So
I was going to say, it's supposed to stop raining at like 5. Praise Jesus, I don't get until 7. So
right, there you go. But for those of you who got nothing to do this weekend, please tune in. I think it's on the SEC Network. The Tom Jones meet is going to be, we want for the ages. So please find some time to tune in. So we're also I'm gonna little challenge today. So number one, Mr. Noah Lyles is scheduled to open up his season this weekend in the 100 meters. So I'm going to kindly ask that I get prediction times that you guys think he's going to run. And we'll start with lady first, Big League. Prediction for Noah's time.
Is that here?
996.
Is that here?
At Tom Jones.
Okay.
996.
Okay. KOP.
Don't Price is Right me.
Too late.
Right. Nah, I think it's either going to be spectacular or what most people would consider uneducatedly a dud, right?
Right.
And I'm not leaning towards the spectacular, because I don't think that that's what they're aiming for. So
Absolutely not.
I'm gonna go 10-0.
10-0-0.
10-0-2.
Okay.
Okay, so now he stole my answer.
Got to be faster than that.
EP.
I can't take 02.
No.
Fine,
Oh,
I'll take
0201.
I'll take 03.
Okay. All right. So
Can I go further? I think he
Yes.
might not win.
let's see what I
Might
can
not
do
or
on this with you.
will win.
I said I think he might not win.
Oh,
Well, listen. If you've seen the start list of Tom Jones,
Right.
somebody's going to run under 10 seconds. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for later is a different issue. But there's no way that Tom Jones is going to end with the winning time being 10:02.
Okay.
Listen, I wasn't trying to be a hater. It's your point. Noah Lyles is trying to win the 100 and 200 at the Olympic Games. Right? So
Right.
I don't think him losing Tom Jones is some sort of like negative harbinger to that.
But if you pay close attention to what he and Lance have been doing over the last few years, it's a very well calculated and executed plan.
Yeah.
So so they're not coming here trying to win the 100. They're coming here to work on some part of his race so he can win in Paris. That's a very good point. Very good point. Okay, so now let's salivate a little bit. Mr. Holloway's opening up this season this weekend. And so this is a good one. So this is for the audience as well. So I'm gonna let you guys predict what you guys think he's gonna run. But then the audience, I want you to send your messages to Big League, and the person that comes closest to what Grant runs is going to receive a free autographed T-shirt and pair of shoes from Grant.
wow.
From the audience.
That's cool.
From the audience. From the audience.
Does that? I was like, that doesn't include us.
No.
Wait, does he know that?
Yeah. I got his permission.
That's a good question right there.
Yeah,
Hey, Grant, I need them shoes.
Yeah.
He's gonna start
Now-
flailing them in the air.
Now, the funny thing about the hurdle issue is I would imagine that Grant and his coach will also be out here working on things for later in the year. The difference is that in the hurdles, you can't really dial it up and dial it down. It's either going to be executed and fast or not executed and pissed off. Like there's not really any middle ground there. So, 1298.
Okay, I like how he skipped you and went before you know though, but that's okay. he was smart. He goes, I'm going to get my number out there first.
Again, you have to be faster than that.
Exactly. So you going 1294?
Absolutely.
You know,
I want to go 84, but I think that's crackish.
But it
Listen,
could happen without it trying to happen. Like
and that's the basis for my Noah time.
No,
Right.
Jesus, we just like Devin's 12-8. You can't convince me that when he went out there for that race in New York, he was like, today's 12-8 day. It just kind of came.
Actually, he said that he promised his coach he wouldn't break the world record that day. They knew he was going to run fast.
Okay.
That's fine.
They did. He said that in an interview afterwards, yeah. But they may have just been talking to, but it came to fruition that day.
my
Right,
biggest issue is I got to see him actually run at hurdles like 12 days ago. And I can't get that out of my head.
So Big League, what do you got?
First off, now he's just showing off. So stop. I get to watch with my
That's okay, but here's the thing: you're going to get the same race.
Exactly.
Amen.
Twice.
So currently it's 98 and 94.
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
I'll split the two, 96.
Really.
I want to, again, like y'all are saying, I want to go lower. But I think
Okay, so
I want to say his legs are loaded. So
you would be right about that.
See?
But I will tell you this now, as far as the audience goes, if any tiebreakers as far as time goes will be broken by whoever gets their message to Chew first, right? So if we have people with the same time, the person that gets their prediction in the Chew first will be the victor. And then we will let you know, and we will get your name and address, and we will mail you your shoes and your t-shirt.
So I'll
Now,
say
of
this.
course, this is all predicated on Chew getting the show released on time.
Well, hold on. First off, I already have all this in my head. The laptop is traveling with me because of this
And
already.
Mr. Petty shows up once again.
But
wow.
what I will say is, instead of sending me a message, please make your predictions in the comments. That way everybody can see what is being said, and that way it can be tallied that way, and it's time-stamped. Well, for the most part, it's time-stamped. It's in my email timestamp. So, but yeah, let's do it that way. That way everybody can see the guesses or estimations, not guesses.
And that way, then we shouldn't have any. If people will follow instructions, they will read in the comments and not make the same predictions, right?
Mhm.
So that's not going to happen.
And okay, here I'll put another rule to it. If you guess the same as another person, it's whoever guessed it first.
Well,
Right,
that's
exactly.
the rule he just said.
Yeah.
Well,
She wasn't listening.
very clear and concise. You have to lay out 1 and 2. You can't just say 1.
Okay, and on that note, we really appreciate everyone tuning in this week. And again, please tune in to Tom Jones. It's going to be live. It's going to be a lot of fun. I do believe that KOP and his crew have traveled the furthest, and we promise to be gracious hosts for a number of great teams and great athletes this weekend. So with that said, we appreciate everybody joining us tonight, and we'll see you again in 7 days.
Sebco, you need to pay everybody.
Oh my Gina. Bye everyone.